Hello there, my name is Dr. Tululope Alugo from St. John Cap. This is where we empower youth mental health by providing education to parents and caregivers. And we also provide information to help children understand their own emotions better. So today I have a special guest. Her name is Dr. Terry. She's practiced pediatrics for over 20 years. She's very passionate about the whole person, that is mind, body, and spirit wellness. Her zone of genius is engaging and empowering adolescents and young adults. She helps these people, these young adults and adolescents with anxiety to master their emotional distress and transform into confident, resilient young adults who are free from fear and who thrive beyond their wildest dreams. I'm going to get her to introduce herself to us in further detail, and then we'll kick off with all the questions that I have for her today. Hi, Dr. Terry. Thank you for joining me today. I'm so happy you're able to do this. Please tell us more about yourself, where you're based, and all the fun stuff that you want to share with us today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tulu. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm not sure that I have much more to say after your very extensive introduction of me. Yes, I am a primary care pediatrician who is trained in integrative medicine. I completed a 2-year fellowship at the Andrew Weil Center at the University of Arizona. I'm passionate about well-being, overall well-being, mind, body, and spirit. And I know that our children have it all within themselves to move forward and to thrive with just some support from us. So it's not always medications. It's really what can you do for yourself, and how can you support your current life to enable you to do the things that you desire. And I am passionate about helping young adults and adolescents really learn the power from within. What's their zone of genius? What are their powers? And not to let anxiety hamper them in any way. Anxiety is good. It helps us motivate and accomplish goals. But when there's too much of it, we are not accomplishing our goals. We then actually are decreasing our performance and our lust for living. So that's me. That's where I'm at, and we can start.
Wow. I mean, you spoke about your fellowship in integrative medicine, the fact that you take the whole, the holistic approach. But I'm just wondering, how did you transition or, get that journey from being a general pediatrician to somebody who's really passionate about anxiety specifically? How did that come about?
It was very organic. When I started my practice over 20 years ago, we did not experience children with problems with emotional regulation, anxiety, depression, ADHD until later on so ADHD would appear in elementary school, and anxiety and depression was really high school age adolescents. But as my practice progressed, something happened in society also. Children started manifesting issues with mental health, anxiety, and depression at younger and younger ages. And I could not bear the idea that I was medicating children in the school age group, elementary school, for their anxiety and depression. I wanted to find an alternative way of doing it. In addition to medication and therapy, what can they do for themselves? How can they how can they use their own personal resources of what I call the trifecta of health is sleep, physical activity, and nutrition. So those are the biggies, right? And this is much more engaged with the individual rather than what advice can I give you? This is what you should do.
Mhm.
That doesn't work, right? I mean, the more you tell someone that this is what they should do or this is what they should want to do, they're not going to want to do
The
it.
more they don't want to do
Right,
it. Yeah.
right, exactly. So the best way to get something done is to tell them, don't do this, you know. So that led me into my journey. And then I also realized that, wow, if I had had this guidance when I was younger, I could have saved myself a lot of time in my 20s and 30s trying to figure out things.
Mm.
So, my idea is to engage and empower the adolescents with wherever they are, though. You have to meet the patient where they are, right? That's the core of integrative medicine. We are not going to tell you what to do. We will coach you, we will work with you. That is a joint partnership. And the children are ready when they're ready. There are many kids, I say, hey, I see that lots of things stir up worries and anxieties in you. What would you like to do? And you
Mhm.
have to show them all the possibilities that are within their control rather than saying, do this, do this, do this. It's overwhelming. Part of their anxiety is already that they are overwhelmed with whatever situation they're in. So it's really meeting the patients where they are, working with them from their level, and helping them thrive and blossom from wherever they are at whatever stage they are. And then also working with the parents, right? How many times have we had anxious or depressed um, patients, yeah, children or adolescents, and then you look at the parents and you're like, ooh. So I actually work with the whole family model, right?
Very good.
It's the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Children are modeling from their parents. So it's the partnership between the patient who may be the child or the adolescent as well as the family. So that's what I love. And it's empowering the patient to use their own personal resources and to really engage them. This is not something that we're doing for them or towards them. It's something that we're doing together and to show them, to give them some self efficacy, right? Like, I can do this.
Mhm.
I can have control over my life. I can have control over my thoughts and emotions. They don't have to spiral me out of control.
Wow. I like the talk about the trifecta because in my emotions ambassador program, I have a whole lesson about the ingredients of healthy emotions, and we talk about exercise, diet, sleep. So those are
Yes.
really those are important elements. So and I also like the idea that you work with parents because you're right, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So you see an anxious child, and the whole environment at home is tense, everybody's worried and stressed, and you can see no wonder they're anxious, no wonder the anxiety isn't getting any better because it just becomes a vicious circle. So it's important to look at the entire, take a 360-degree approach in dealing with a child. So I'm wondering, in your experience with working with anxious children, are there specific disorders that you're seeing, and do they vary by age group?
Anxiety is not all anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder. Certainly, there's a high percentage of that, but it can be social anxiety, it can be generalized anxiety, it can have some compulsive component to it. Um, and then children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, as you know, anxiety kind of goes hand in hand, two peas in the same pod for them, right?
Mhm.
So it comes in many flavors and it's different for every individual. But, you know, uh, what is more, a lot of it has to do with emotional dysregulation, right? And children have that. If you look back in toddlerhood, children haven't learned how to moderate their emotions. So they have two flavors. They have really upset and angry and really happy. And
Mhm.
toddlers, I think, are a little bipolar in that sense, in that they switch from really happy to really unhappy in a snap of a finger. And some children don't develop the vocabulary for their emotions. So I think your program is so important because you're teaching them the words behind what they're feeling and they're thinking to give them the vocabulary. And then they can express themselves. And then hopefully there can be shades of gray in between, but it's all based in emotional dysregulation where things can overwhelm you. Ordinary everyday life events are just overwhelming. Thought of going to school and leaving your parents, it's overwhelming,
Mhm.
right? Impulsivity, how to control your impulsivity, how to learn that just because I want to eat that ice cream sundae right now and it's breakfast time, I should not be eating that ice cream sundae now and I can wait until perhaps after lunch or after dinner. And then just how they perceive things and then how they react out to their perceptions. And I find that adolescence is an extension of toddlerhood in many ways, right? So we want to help them build that vocabulary, and then we want them to be able to use that vocabulary and know that they have much wider spectrum for where their emotions can land and how they can react to them, rather than just being stuck in that toddler mode of happy, unhappy,
Yeah.
happy, crazy, right? That's the center of emotional dysregulation. And I think that's the bigger part. I don't know that, all children, so the numbers are 30% of adolescents and young adults in the general public have some form of anxiety, right? I don't know that they all have generalized anxiety, social phobia, and all these other phobias. It stems from, and we can stem it, we can help them deal with it much earlier by helping them build emotional regulation early on
Yeah.
at every phase of development.
Right. I mean, you're so right. There's always a spectrum. You just see some non-specific anxiety that you can't really, put in a box and say this is a specific disorder. It's just like free floating anxiety that's been there. And there's so many different triggers, from having to follow rules to being feeling like they're out of control. And then as they get older, is the social demands or handling relationships, handling schoolwork. And it just, goes on and on and on. So there's just such a wide variety of reasons why people turn up with, or why children turn up with anxiety, and adolescents as well. And I like this, your analogy about how they're either really happy 1 minute and crazy the next, just to say that in inverted commas. And parents really find that difficult, and they're saying, I just don't understand. Are they bipolar? They're fine 1 minute and they just flip. And a lot of adolescents will say to me, it's like a roller coaster. Their moods are just rapidly swinging,
Absolutely.
and it's
Yeah.
difficult to find a middle ground. But I wanted to just double check with you. So, in your practice, are there particular triggers that are commoner than others for the anxiety that people are presenting with to you?
I think it's a combination. There's never just one trigger, right? If you have ADHD, you have lower levels of emotional regulation to begin with.
Yeah.
So things that may not trigger somebody else may trigger the impulsive response, or the over explosive response in a child with ADHD. Then there's the child who may really just is very concrete. So this is before puberty and adolescence. So if things don't go just the way they had anticipated the day was going to be, as planned as it should be, everything blows up because they haven't developed that flexibility yet,
Mhm.
and that range of emotion, and that range of, I can function from many different levels. There's not just one path to the final destination. And then there's the social pressures, right? Academic performance. The level of academic pressure that's on our children nowadays, I don't recall that growing up 30 years ago, 30, 40 years ago. I thought most of that pressure came in high school, but now I have children who, where they're driving it or their parents are driving it, but oftentimes it's the children even, and they must be absorbing it from their parents, correct? They are really stressed. I have middle schoolers who are like freaked out that they might get a B. I'm like, it's okay. And I tell them,
It's okay to
you
get a
know what?
B.
Yeah, it's all right. You did your best. If you didn't put effort into it, then that's a different situation. But why use your energy to stress about how you might do? Why don't you do something about it? And then remember that, in your prior experience, when you put your effort and your work into it, you aced it, or you did well, right? And that's not the determinant of who you are, your academic performance. And then there's sports performance, right? There are some kids who are excellent athletes and they freeze on the field.
Mhm.
It's something, you have to be in that right mindset. If something flips that switch for you, you're frozen. I can tell this. My son was a varsity tennis player in high school, all 4 years, and the top ranked player in his team, excellent. I mean, the skills were incredible. But I remember he froze. At the
Wow.
start of every season, something would happen. By the time he got to senior year, it got better, but I felt so bad. And this is a person who very academically driven, very athletically driven. It's perfectionism, right? It's that perfectionism. There's so many different triggers. So it can be the perfectionist drive in you, the controller drive in you. And then it's worsened in adolescence, it's amplified because their hormones are really cycling up and down, and it's much deeper and steeper. It's not little, hills and valleys anymore. It's
Mhm.
mountains, or it's big monsoon waves, as I call it, and that's normal. We have to help the children and the adolescents realize that's normal. This is
Mm.
part of development. You're not the only one going through it. And you can learn how to surf those waves. So I say the waves will always be there. It's how you surf the waves. And if you fall down, you're going to be able to get up again.
Yeah.
But you have to remember that you're able to get up again, right? And control the things that you have control over, things that you can actually do, versus wasting all that energy on things that you cannot control. You cannot control the future. You can't fix the past. All you have is the present moment.
Hmm.
And how it all starts with your awareness of your emotions and thoughts, checking yourself in and going, okay, is this a three-alarm fire situation? Or is this really, yes, this triggers some worries and anxieties in me, but it doesn't deserve a three-alarm fire bell, right? But that's where some of that emotional dysregulation, that anxiety comes from, is
Exactly.
that they are caught in that part of the more primitive brain, the amygdala,
Hmm.
where it is fight, flight, or freeze. Those are the responses. And that's very adequate if your house is burning down or if you're about to get hit by a truck in the middle of the road. But that's not for everyday events like something didn't go the way you planned. That's not a
Hmm.
three-fire alarm. But that's where we can help them intervene and go, oh, okay, I know that I am feeling like this is going to spiral out of control, but let's double check. That is a thought, that's an emotion, that's a feeling I have. But is it really a three-fire alarm? Am I going to die? No, you're not. And then you can move into your more sage mind and
Hmm.
your wise mind, where you're taking in all the data and then planning a reaction to it, right? Rather than just being reactive. And that's where a lot of children who are stuck in emotional dysregulation, they just function from that immediate fight, flight, or freeze response. And that's so distressing and so hard on the body and the mind because you feel so out of control. It's just like an automatic response. You
Yeah.
have no way to control that. Whereas if we can shift you into your more sage mind and your more rational mind, you can take in the data, process, and then react.
Wow. I like the fact that you've spoken about, some of the triggers, but also how to help. Because you're right, it must be so stressful to be in this state of high tension all the time. Your body is tense, your mind is racing, heart is racing. It must be so draining and tiring to feel that way all the time. And definitely there is help. I will get to that. You've spoken about some of the symptoms like the athlete who froze. I mean, I wanted you to just talk about a few other symptoms that people would present with when they're anxious, particularly those with big emotions, so the emotional dysregulation. How would that look like for a parent to be able to identify that, okay, this child may be anxious?
Oh, yes. It's they're having emotional outbursts for everything. It didn't go as planned, and there's a meltdown. There's tears, and you look at them and you go, "Wait, aren't you like 14? Why are you behaving like a toddler?" Okay. There's a lot of parallels there. Or they can't sleep. They went to their room at 9 o'clock, and you might have even taken away the electronics, but you hear click, 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 upstairs. There's foot traffic in their bedroom, and it takes 2 or 3 hours for them to fall asleep, or waking up in the middle of the night, okay, and not being able to calm themselves back into going back to sleep.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, tummy aches as a general pediatrician. How many times have parents They are insistent that I do a whole gastroenterologic um, workup for their children, because they are sure that there is a GI disease here, all right?
Yeah.
Because the abdominal pain and the cramps, sometimes there's diarrhea, sometimes there's constipation, big time, okay? And it's almost every day. And I go, let's step back, we'll do some workup. And then we go, oh, when is this happening? Oh, around exams. Oh, around crunch time, around maybe a musical performance. So then we get to see some patterns here. Oh, at the start of the school year, this happens every August. So it's anxiety masking itself as physical symptoms. I will say that abdominal pain is probably one of the biggest ones. Now, if your child is still thriving, meaning growing physically well, and is eating well and really doesn't have any issues with eating in itself, but it's just this ambiguous abdominal pain, and perhaps it only happens during the weekdays when there's school and never on the weekends. That's a big one, right? Um, and then headaches. Oh my gosh, how many of those tension headaches in kids that, again, may happen when there is school or on the weekdays, but never on vacation. hmm So that's another way that our bodies are telling us there's a physical component to what's going on in their brains. Sleep, behavior, um, headaches, abdominal pain, chest pain. Oh, that's a biggie, right? And it's chest pain at rest. So the
Mhm.
chest pain that we worry about as physicians is, oh, is it a cardiac issue? Is it a lung issue or a respiratory issue? But you only have this at rest. Your chest hurts at rest before you go to sleep.
Mhm.
Hmm. Or at certain interactions with friends, maybe, or teachers, whatever, or when you're in the spotlight. So those are all physical symptoms of the anxiety.
Wow. And another one I see with somatic symptoms is like pain around the shoulders, behind the neck, just because they're just tense all the time. For us
Mm-hmm.
here in Canada now, we've just gone back to school in the last 2 weeks. So there's a lot of anxiety about going to school, headaches in the morning, abdominal pains.
Mm-hmm.
It's also tryout season for different
Yes.
teams.
Yes.
So anxiety is ramping up and everybody's just so stressed out. So I wanted you to talk about your program and how you help these adolescents and young adults with big emotions. How do you help with emotional regulation?
So I have a group program, and it runs 6 weeks, and it's for adolescents, and it's for adolescents who want to do it. I am a big believer that children and adolescents will come around to knowing this is not how they want to live, this is not how they want to feel. And when that time has come for them, when they've tried other things, they've tried therapy, they've tried medications, and they may get some progress for the time that they're in therapy, and then it dissipates. Like they feel better, they drop out of therapy. So, what I'm offering here is we're not doing therapy. You've already had therapy. We're not teaching a class. That's not it. This is group learning, group immersion. It's to be fun. It's meant to be fun. It's not a class. There's no lecture. There's not a million slides. It's about engagement. It is to teach the youngsters what emotions kind of drive this false alarm in them. Where do you feel it in your body, right?
Mhm.
Because it's so your anxiety, your worries, your fears, all connected physically somehow to your body. There is a physical manifestation. And so the first part is learning about the physical manifestation that says, oh, my worries, my fears are coming on. I'm about to spiral and spin out of control in that reactive mind. I would like to go switch over into my more sage mind and my wise mind. Fact check it, and then what can I do? And that's the key. Is we want to strengthen the more rational mind,
Mhm.
the wise mind. So strengthen that muscle, amplify that muscle, and amplify that voice so that that's your go-to, and not the blaring voice that, or blaring voice or muscle that's like, oh my gosh, fear equals, distress, distress, distress. We have to, turn on all the alarms in the body, because you're absolutely right. You get all clenched. I
Mhm.
tell the kids, I'm like, are you feeling kind of clenched? And they're like,
Yeah.
yeah. And I said, well, what would it feel like if you were able to put your hands on your shoulders and
Mhm.
bring them down and say, oh, I know, I felt distress there, I felt whatever, but I can handle this. Yeah. So learning about your physical manifestations, back checking it, and then going, oh, what options do I have? How do I regain control of the situation? And so there's so many tools, as you know, and it all stems from the individual. I don't think that there's one way to do it. And I will tell you, I never use the word mindfulness or meditation, but that is a lot of where it boils down to, right? Is
Right.
your self-awareness is based in you being able to take a few seconds, maybe half a minute, to just recenter,
Mhm.
feel what you're feeling, check it and go, "Oh, is this a fact, or is this just a feeling?"
Right.
And it's not a fact, then you can move on. And then we do the different, you can do breathing. I love the breathing exercises where we trace our fingers and do 5 slow breaths. But some kids are like, oh God, no, I don't want to do breathing. And I say, okay, that's fine. I mean, you're alive. That's why you're
Mhm.
breathing. But and we know physiologically, if we slow down your breathing, and especially your when you on your out breath, if you
Mhm.
really slow that down, you are going to bring into yourself into a calm state. But okay, you're a person, let's say your child has ADHD, there's no way they're going to sit and breathe
Mhm.
through anything, right? They're like this all the time. I say, okay, well, use that energy, get up and dance, get up and dance, turn on the music, dance, because you cannot be clenched and dance. I mean, turn on your favorite music, dance, do jumping jacks. There's so many things to do. And it could be as silly as popping on a video, and it's something hysterical on YouTube. Save a couple of videos that just make you guffaw. And guess what? It melts away the stress. So these
Wow.
are just immediate short-term things. But the goal of the program is to learn the self-awareness there, and to know that you have a choice and that you can control it. But what's the extra in here? You're in a group environment. Your group will, right? Because they're all group minded in
Mhm.
adolescence, correct?
Yes, indeed.
So we're going to use that to their advantage here. So the group provides you normalcy. You are not alone in this. You have a peer group of quite a few people who are feeling and sensing the same stuff that you do, and may react in different ways, but it all stems from the same core of anxiety and emotional dysregulation. And then, you kind of compare, and so there's always a little bit of like, what's the other person doing? So we're going to use that to our advantage as well, right? That's going to be the part that encourages the young person to keep with the program and do what needs to be done for themselves, and then compare with each other, like, hey, what worked, what didn't work. You learn so much from other people. I do not believe that teachers and doctors, the lectures that we give or the advice that we give, is the way to go. I think we can facilitate the conversation so that the children, the young adult, comes to their own place. Like, oh, they have to have their own aha moment, right? You can see it, like you can see it in
Mhm.
their eyes, and they're like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna do that. Uh-huh. And so, in order to build a new habit, and that's what we're trying to do here, build a new habit of how you react to your emotions and your thoughts and your feelings. Any new habit takes 21 days to establish, as you know.
Yeah.
So we're going to build time into this. We're going to give it 6 weeks, because there are going to be off days here. We don't want
Mhm.
anybody to feel bad. They're already feeling bad about themselves. They're already judging themselves. So we don't need to contribute to that, right? So this is all about engaged, positive, but real positive engagement. And there's no toxic positivity here. Like if you're feeling bad today and you come to the group and you're feeling bad, you're feeling bad. What was it? Da, 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 da. But how can we move on? So very action oriented, and supportive. And it's really about the group environment here that will motivate and keep people on their trajectory, wherever it may be.
Wow. I like all the elements you've spoken about, the fact that you're capitalizing on that group effect, like that is so important to adolescents. The fact that you kind of get their buy-in because they have to be interested in it to, I mean, to want to do it, but then to keep them sustained is the fact that now they've made friends who have the same symptoms, and so maybe it's not just them who's feeling this way, but they feel that identification with another child or adolescent with similar symptoms, and they have a few weeks to learn over a period of time and to gain these skills. I think that's fantastic. And I know on Instagram you are at Dr. Terry Nguyen, and then resilientmd.org is your
Yes,
website. Okay.
yes.
Do you have any other social media platforms that people can find you on apart from
No,
the
that's
two
it.
I've put on?
That's it for
Okay.
now. I'm also on
Okay.
Facebook. So I'm on
Right.
Facebook, Instagram, and I have a website, www.resilientmd.org. And
Okay.
the program is starting September 27th, and it runs for 6 weeks, 1 hour each week, and it's virtually. It's on a Tuesday evening from 7 to 8. So very excited to kick off this first group. And I have a couple of people, but I also have a couple of spots left. So I hope that people will check it out.
Exactly, because it's the right time of the day, 7 p.m. Eastern. So it's kind of after school, hopefully after activities. And if you make this a priority, you will make the time for it. So I really would recommend that people check this out. So before I let you go, Dr. Terry, do you have any last words of advice for any parents whose kids are struggling with anxiety?
My biggest bit of advice is they will get through this, and so will you. You
Yeah.
got through their adolescence, you got through their toddlerhood and you in the depths of it, you're like, oh my gosh, it's never going to end, right? Those temper tantrums. Well, guess what? This is adolescent temper tantrums. It's yet another developmental phase, and they need to do this to separate from you. Okay. But you can model, gently riding the waves rather than having to have these deep monsoons that you have to surf and maybe get pulled in with the undertow. So there is a way through this. So this is the path through the mountain rather than around and around the mountain. Um, and I've seen it over and over in my over 20 years of practice is we all get through it. Let's try to shorten this course for our children. Let's move it into maybe a 6-month period rather than 2 or 3 years of learning how to surf. So that's what I'm offering here.
That's great advice. I always tell parents, what your child needs is a calm, reassuring presence while they're going through all this roller coaster of emotions. So it's important for parents to equip themselves, educate themselves as much as possible, show up their own resources so that way they're able to support their child. Thank you so much, Dr. Terry. I'm so grateful that you've come to spend this time and really explained the strategies that you've developed in your practice. And I'm excited for your program as well. I think it's going to be great for adolescents. And hopefully we can have another chat again soon about the anxiety disorders because it's such a huge issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tula. It was a pleasure discussing this topic at my passion with you.
Great.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity.
And so everybody, follow St. John Cap on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, follow Resilient MD as well, and Dr. Terry. And till we meet again discussing another important topic in youth mental health, take care of yourselves, stay educated, and keep supporting your youth. Thank you.
Thank you.